Good evening. It's just so great to springboard off the energy of worship straight into being able to share the Lord's word this evening. It's just so great. Privilege. So yeah, we're going to be reading from Exodus 3, the next chapter of the journey and story of Moses. Should be very interesting. And it's the burning bush tonight. So what I'm going to do is just leap straight into it and read from Exodus 3. My initial thoughts and feelings when reading that. Sort of interesting ones really. I went back to, it's very sort of just described, that's a normal thing, is the burning bush. Now, last Saturday I went and saw Darren Brown talking about his new book, which was on happiness, and he was talking about how over the centuries happiness has changed, sort of the concept of happiness has changed, what we think happiness is, what we think happiness should be, and how we can achieve happiness, and what the world says happiness is. And that got me thinking about this, how through the centuries it's changed. I was thinking, seeing a burning bush. So Moses was walking along and saw a bush on fire. Now, putting this into today's perspective, if we were wandering through Wormley Fields or Harton Common or somewhere similar, and we just saw a bush on fire, that would be one thing. Why is there one bush on fire? Just one out. And then the second thing I was thinking of is it's not actually physically burning up. It's not burning. Nothing physically happens apart from there's fire on it. So it's sort of a fireproof bush in the middle of this field. And thirdly, if a face and a voice was coming from it, that would be even more bizarre. So on top of that, I was thinking, what would we do if we saw that nowadays, in this day and age? We'd most likely either just run away, because it's a very sort of scary thing, voice coming from a bush that's on fire, that's not burning, very odd. Or would we just walk on by, sort of, it's someone else's problem? That's sort of the today's sort of attitude in some ways, sort of, let someone else deal with that. Or would we, the most likely one is we'd take a picture or put it on Facebook, or hashtag, some description. That's most likely what we'd do now. And it just got me thinking really, how come Moses was so prepared for this? And how come, even if he wasn't prepared for it, how come he just accepted it and he was so open to it? And that's just one of my thoughts on it, really. And I think the world's certainly changed since then. I think us as people have changed since then, but I don't think God has changed since then. So that gets me thinking even more. And the way he just accepts it. And then one more step further than that is God then asks him to do something quite incredible, where probably we are asked things now from God. But Moses was asked to go to Egypt and to get all the Israelites and take them away, and go to Pharaoh as well. Now, again, I was thinking the equivalent nowadays would be, perhaps we go up to Scotland, we'll go to one of the members of Parliament up there, maybe find all of the Scottish people that want to remain in the UK and bring them down to England. If God came down and said, let's go and do that, go and do that, from a burning bush in Wormley Plainfields, it would be, I think it would end up a different story. Would we be prepared to do something that big? And so sort of, would we have the strength to do that now? Would we have the worthiness of doing that? So that's really just got me thinking more and more. I might explain. It got me, one of the things I thought of when I went off to the US and served with Young Life was, how do you hear God? How do you... I know there's a lot of people that say, God's asked me to do this. God's asked me to do that. I've been called to go and spend time with this person. I've been called to go and help this person. Sacrifice. Don't go out on a Friday night. Instead, have a phone call with someone that maybe very alone. But I've always been someone to think, is that God talking to me? Is that just me talking to me? Or is it, when do I know when it's God's voice over someone else's voice or my own thoughts? And a lady who was speaking at the camp in Young Life over the summer, she said we have three voices in our heads, and it's the voice of ourselves, the voice of the enemy, and the voice of God. And it really is, I guess, our job to figure out which one is God's voice. And I was talking to another guy about it and saying, well, I struggled with it, and sort of, am I just talking to myself? Is this God talking to me? And how do I know when God's talking to me? And he said it's not necessarily voices in your head or something as obvious as a burning bush talking to you, but more, you get a feeling, you get sort of the thought, you get compelled to go in and do something that you're meant to. And I think it's probably just through practice and being open, and being able to listen out for those signs. And over a period of time, I guess you get better and better at realising when it's God talking to you. Instead of sort of, if it's your own sort of priorities, that will always go below what God's asking you to do. And that's what God was asking Moses, I suppose. God was asking Moses to do a huge, massive thing. But God now asks us to do things, maybe not as big as go up to Scotland and get everyone down, or go and rescue a whole nation, but just little things. And it's all building blocks in the kingdom of God and what He's trying to get us to achieve. So it's also greatly about the trust of what God tells us. So we may be able to hear what God tells us, but we may not act on it. We may not think we're worthy or able to do that magnificent thing, or change a life, or anything like that. So it's greatly a big trust. So Moses was asked all these things, and he was very accepting of it, but he was cautious. He was sort of, what if they don't listen to me? What if they don't hear what I'm saying? Or how can I prove that it was you that was telling me to go out and rescue the Israelites? How can I prove that? And God just says, I am who I am. And then sort of a little spoiler into the 4th chapter about how then God tells him how He will provide His hand in the matter, and He'll be there every step of the way. And we can still relate that to now. But we have to trust that God will be there every step of the way. So if God's asking us to do something, He'll be there every step of the way. I know, as Tim has told me a few times, that God has never let him down, not once. And that just is something that rings so true with this. You just have to trust that the outcome will be great. It may not be what we want or what we're expecting, but it will be the outcome that's meant to be, if it's what God has asked us to do. So I suppose that's my talk. Trust and faithfulness, and how we can trust God when He asks us to do something, as hard as it may be.